development, we have undertaken an analysis of the budget, which we disseminated to stakeholders earlier. This has been reduced into a booklet also, apart from our submission. I hope members have got the booklet.
We do have. Yeah, we have.
Okay. Yeah. So just for reference. So I'll just touch on some of the key issues arising there, and then maybe also raise issues for discussion. I think it will probably be better if there's more discussion rather than the presentation that I'm going to make. I presume members will have gone through the budget, had the budget, and gone through the various documents. Maybe to summarize, we believe that the budget which has been presented by the Minister of Finance is progressive in spirit, and its focus is mainly on the development of the private sector, elevating the role of the private sector in the national development process. So let me go through the prepared remarks. The Minister of Finance addressed the nation on 29th September to deliver the 2024 national budget. This was the third budget under the current government. The budget was themed Unlocking Economic Potential and set the policy tone for the nation for the 2024 fiscal year and beyond. In all likelihood, the budget aims at facilitating private sector-led growth and inclusive development in the wake of economic turbulences that have rocked the world, both at the global and at the domestic level. With respect to the budget, it is apparent we have a budget of 177.9 billion, which is 6.3% above the 2023 budget, which was 107.3 billion. However, when expressed as a percentage of gross domestic product, the 2024 budget at 27.8% is smaller than the 2023 value of 31.4%. So what we're going to do now is provide a synopsis of ZIPA's analysis of the macroeconomic objectives, the fiscal governance environment, the revenue measures and expenditure priorities, the real sector interventions, and finally the human development implications contained in the 2024 budget. In terms of economic growth, the budget projects a GDP growth of 4.8% and an inflation target of 6 to 8%, and a fiscal deficit within reach in the margins of around 5%. The budget emphasizes the importance of sectors such as mining, agriculture, manufacturing, tourism for economic growth purposes, and proposes measures to support these sectors. When you look at page 5 of our submission, that despite the projected increase in GDP for 2024 to 4.8%, page 5 of the main report.
Yeah, that's fine.
Not a colorful document. Despite the projected increase in GDP for 2024, which is 4.8%, from 2.7% in 2023, you recall that just recently there was a revision in the projected growth of 2023 from 4.2% to 2.7%, and foreign direct investment, as well as stimulating local investment. On page 6, we talk about inflation, and we say, regarding inflation, the budget aims to move and contain inflation within the 6 to 8% range. You will recall that the inflation had dropped in mid-2022. It had dropped to about 10% and went below into single digit. But challenges have arisen in the sense that now it has gone back over 10% and is now standing at around 12%. So we are recognizing that there are still inflationary pressures which exist within the economy owing to supply constraints, and also can also say partly because of the large informal sector. So in other words, there is a big challenge on inflation. The central bank has tightened monetary policy with a view to controlling inflation. But you can see that there is an obvious challenge, because the monetary policy rate was increased 2 times in succession, but the inflation rate is still going up. And then the exchange rate has also deteriorated. It has even crossed over 20% in the last few days. So there is a problem somewhere. So fundamentally, what we would say is that the government is urged to implement policies which boost food production and promote financial inclusion and limit the use of cash transactions. I want to state this, that there is, within our economy, there's a duality in our economy where a significant part of the economy operates outside of the formal sector. So when we make policies, like monetary policies, we're trying to impact those economic agents who are in the formal sector. Unfortunately, the informal sector is very big. It's probably even bigger than the formal sector. Those figures, the figures on the, yeah. When we have looked at the figures, for instance, honorable members, how much of currency is managed by the central bank, the figure is around 14 billion. But when you look at the flows of transactions, say in the mobile money market, is 298 billion. That gives you an indication of the quantum of resources which are outside of the formal banking sector. So in other words, if you take policy measures, monetary policy measures, you would largely impact about 14 billion kwacha. And this 298 billion is not subject to control, it's not impacted by central bank measures. So this means that the effectiveness of monetary policy of the central bank is questionable when it comes to trying to control inflation. So part of the reasons why this inflation may be is that there's an element which is a bit out of control of the monetary authorities and the fiscal authorities. On page 9, the budget aims to manage volatilities in foreign exchange market. We have seen the movement of the exchange rate. As I said, the exchange rate moved from about 24 kwacha in August 2021 and appreciated to about 16 kwacha per dollar. Again, the exchange rate has depreciated. Yesterday when I checked, it just crossed over 20 kwacha per dollar. So there is an instability within this exchange rate. And there may be a link also between the movements of this exchange rate and also the illicit, the informal, in the informal market, the flows of money in the informal market. So the budget aims to manage these volatilities in the foreign exchange market and proposes investments in domestic production capacities to reduce forex demand and also to create export capacity. It also sets targets for fiscal deficit reduction and international reserve coverage. The government aims to reduce borrowing and increase domestic resource mobilization. On page 12, the government commits itself to improve fiscal governance by sealing the leakage of public finances, reduce debt to sustainable levels by prioritizing concessional borrowing, and the scale up of implementation of the decentralization policy through increased constituency development fund allocations. So what we are saying is that we are appealing to the government to strengthen the accountability mechanisms so that the CDF releases do not create severe public financial management slippages. By moving these resources to the local level and demanding accountability for each and every project that takes place at that level, it would appear that there's a greater possibility of exercising due surveillance and superintendence over those finances. But mechanisms must be put in place nevertheless. On page 22, we talk about tax reform. The budget outlines reforms to strengthen tax administration, broaden the tax base, and combat revenue leakages. The government aims to enhance domestic revenue collection and fiscal consolidation. It also introduces a levy on mobile money transactions and proposes an increase in excise duty. What we want to observe here, that the tax base, presently the position on the taxation is that the burden of taxation in this country falls on a very, very limited set of people. If you look at the current structure of income tax, the top rate of tax is reached at a point where it's about 7,000, 8,000 kwacha. Now the top rate of tax is supposed to impinge upon those people who are high earners, top earners. Now, if you say to me that 10,000 kwacha is the top earner in Zambia, then that is really a source of concern. The people who should be paying that 37% tax should be people who are earning well over 100,000. But now the top rate of tax begins to bite at less than 10,000. And 10,000 cannot really be considered to be a top earner. So we're saying that you need to rethink the whole tax system so that we can properly harvest the benefits. One of the problems you have when you have this very harsh tax system, which goes up to 37% at less than 10,000 kwacha, is that you discourage people from complying with the rules of tax laws, because the temptation for evasion is greater. If you are going out of the 10,000 kwacha, 4,000 kwacha has to be paid to the tax authorities. The temptation, this is a empirical fact which you have observed in many instances, in many jurisdictions, that people, when they feel that a substantial amount of their money is not going to enter their pockets, they find ways and means of evading it. And this may be both at the individual level and also even at the corporate level. So both the companies which pay the money, they will find mechanisms by which they can avoid paying tax. By, for instance, what they call as expenses are actually income. Instead of paying you an allowance, say for a car, which would probably be taxable, they simply treat that as an expense on the company. So you still get the benefit, but you are not obliged to pay tax on that. So there's a need to rethink this whole tax structure. Currently, as an institution, we're working with our partners to see how tax system can be reformed to make it more fairer and equitable to the taxpayers. We also have some reservations on the imposition of the levy on transactions, on financial mobile money transactions, because mobile money is the alternative to the banking sector. And people now save money on their on their phones. They have accounts. And some of them have extended so far as even to provide loans under those mobile money. So our feeling is that we must continue to expand this alternative as an alternative to the conventional banking sector. If you go into the banking hall now, you find it's practically empty. And you're wondering, where are all the customers? People have been moving away from traditional banking and using these other avenues. So we should be very careful. We should cultivate this and monitor it, because this is the alternative bank. So we are saying that when the government introduces measures like the levy, they're actually discouraging the growth of this sector. And we have to be very cautious that and this is what we call financial inclusion, because we are saying when these people use this channel, they're actually becoming part of the formal system. They're becoming more and more part of the formal system. So we need to cultivate this sector properly as an alternative banking system. On page, let me move on. Page 26, we are talking about the agricultural sector. Agriculture is perhaps the economic sector that is closest to the people, and it did very cardinal for the government in its bid to reduce poverty and change the economic fortunes of the country. However, the 2024 budget seems to present nothing out of the ordinary by continuing with the Farmer Input Support Program as the main agricultural investment program with an allocation of 8.56 billion. And there's been a 6.5% reduction from the 2023 budget allocation. Now, must be designed to achieve certain